They said the age of the Roman epic was over. Then Ridley Scott released Gladiator, a tale of betrayal, honor, and vengeance that conquered the world. It didn't just revive the genre, it redefined it and made Russell Crowe a legend. A production so intense it nearly broke everyone involved and yet created one of the greatest films ever made. From Russell Crowe rewriting his lines on set to Oliver Reed's final performance after his real-life death. Today, we step behind the sand and blood to uncover 25 incredible facts about Gladiator, the film that turned vengeance into legend. Stay until the end, there's a bonus fact especially for you cinema lovers. The film starts in Northern Europe in 180 AD, where the Roman Empire goes into battle with Germanic tribes. It's a huge battle sequence with hundreds of extras, explosions, and fire. And Ridley Scott actually found a bit of luck here. The sequence was filmed in Bourne Woods, Surrey, England, and the Royal Forestry Commission had slated the area for deforestation. Ridley Scott heard about it and offered the studio services to burn the place to the ground, as long as they could film it.
The Forestry Commission wanted to lose some forest, so I said, I'll do it, I'll burn it to the ground. They said, good. So I had 400 meters of forest I could burn and do what I wanted.
By the end of the first act, we found out that Maximus has 2 horses back home. They're engraved on his armor breastplate, and he tells us that they're called Argento and Scarto. Translated from Latin, Argento means silver and Scarto means trigger. Silver was the name of the Lone Ranger's horse, and Trigger was the name of Roy Rogers' horse. Maximus has another pet, a wolf called Kite. In real life, Kite wasn't a wolf, he was actually a Tervuren Belgian Shepherd. They couldn't use a real wolf because the opening was filmed in England, which had strong anti-rabies laws. Kite also played another famous screen dog. It was Robbie Jackson's dog Wellard in the UK soap EastEnders for a few years. In the battle sequence, we also hear one of the film's most iconic lines of dialogue. After Maximus briefs his troops, he says, "Strength and honor." That wasn't in the script. Russell Crowe came up with it himself.
I said to Ridley, I want the character to say something like that, when he greets soldiers from his regiment and stuff, he should say that when he's leaving them. That's his sort of thing, So, and I said, I want him to say, Forza Aeonorum. And Ridley goes, what does that mean? I said, it means strength and honor. He goes, say that.
Crowe also ad-libbed some dialogue in the scenes where Maximus describes his home to Marcus Aurelius. That was all improvised by Crowe, and he was actually describing his own home in Australia. DreamWorks always wanted Ridley Scott to be the man to helm Gladiator, but wasn't certain at first. So to convince him, the head of DreamWorks, Walter F. Parks, and producer Douglas Wick told Scott that they wanted to do with the film and to visualize it. They showed him a painting from 1872 by a French painter named Jean-Léon Gérôme.
About spending his twilight years, and many people, Ridley's an artist. He often jokes about spending his twilight years in some garden painting. And so Walter Parks and I went to see Ridley, and we brought the script, and we also brought a painting, a famous painting of the arena.
The artist was Jean-Léon Gérôme, and it was entitled Thumbs Down. And it shows a corner of the Colosseum, the wall, and one seems to be looking back up at what probably is one of the more corrupt of the emperors. It looks like Nero, I think, who's actually leaning over in a kind of rather debauched state with his thumb down, indicating that the Antibatai, who is the armored gladiator, who's standing over the vanquished who is still alive, and he's looking up at the emperor saying, should I kill him or not? And the guy's doing that, which means death.
The painting is called Pollice Verso, which means thumbs down, and shows a gladiator standing over a beaten opponent. Scott loved the painting, and it played a part in him signing on to direct the film. Ridley Scott was very keen on avoiding his predecessor's cliches in Gladiator. He wanted his film to have grounded realism, and he and his team went all out to achieve that. The costume designer Janty Yates and her team created over 10,000 costumes for the cast and extras. Almost 30,000 pieces of armor were created for the movie.
250 Germans, 300 Felix troops, 100 Felix archers, about 80 cavalry.
Most of the Rome set scenes were filmed in Malta, including the massive replica of the Colosseum. It was 52 feet tall, took 7 months to build, and cost $1 million. Before we move on, if you're loving these behind-the-scenes stories, do me a favor and smash that subscribe button. We've got so much more content like this coming, and you won't want to miss it. State-of-the-art digital effects were created to provide establishing shots of the city, pushing the boundaries of what was possible at the time. The lead character is Maximus Decimus Meridius, played by Russell Crowe, of course. Scott cast Crowe after seeing him in Romper Stomper, a 1992 Australian drama, and said he was someone worth watching. But as is often the case, there were other names up. Most notably, there have been rumors that Mel Gibson was offered the role and turned it down. Gibson says he was too old to play Maximus, and Scott denies he was ever even offered the part. Also, Hugh Jackman and Antonio Banderas were considered. Russell Crowe said that when he was approached to play Maximus, the script was so bad that the producers wouldn't send it to him in case it put him off. Instead, they just asked him to meet Ridley Scott. Crowe did get his hands on the script, though, and didn't like it. He was going to say no, but he was working on The Insider in 1999 at the time, and its director Michael Mann told Crowe he should meet with Scott anyway. Crowe did, and said, Ripley's pitch was basically, we've got a $100 million budget, it's ancient Rome, you're playing a general, and you're being directed by me. Crowe was suitably impressed and took the part. Crowe was so unhappy with the script during production that he would frequently walk off set and initially refuse to say the famous line, I will have my vengeance in this life or the next.
I can remember being on the set and I'd literally just done a scene and the pages are rushed through and they're standing there about to do the lines. In fact, it was that moment when he takes off his helmet and says who he is, and I'd written this speech. And he said, I'm not gonna speak this shit. Ridley says, well, what's the problem, Russell? What do I want to speak this for? Why can't we have it the way it was this morning? Because that's what he's rehearsed. Fair enough. So what is Ridley going to do? He says, okay, we'll shoot that. So they shoot the earlier version. It's not all that good, And then Russell does it, and then he comes over and he says, let me have a look at that shit. And he looks at the page again and says, well, might as well try it. So they do the new material.
Writer William Nicholson modestly said later, in Russell's defense, my lines were garbage.
And it's fantastic. Electrifying, you see. And so Ridley said, Russell, what's the problem? It worked. And Russell says, it was shit, but I'm the greatest actor in the world and I can make even shit sound good.
Despite not being a big fan of the script, Crowe really threw himself into the role. Over the course of the action scenes, he lost all feeling in his right forefinger for 2 years afterward. He also aggravated his Achilles tendon, broke his foot, cracked his hip, and popped some bicep tendons out of their sockets. But an unforgettable director-actor partnership and understanding was forged.
You're a Roman general, and you've been directed by Ridley Scott. He did this little test on me day one. He just comes up to me and goes, I'm just going to shoot you, contemplating. I want you to look over to your right, and I want you to see a small bird in the tree. The bird will fly away, and I want you to watch its flight, and its flight brings you back to the battlefield and what's actually in front of you. Right. And he goes, and action. So I do that, and I'm pretty sure I did every single thing he asked, and I put little strokes of color on certain things, and he just came up to me and goes, you and me are going to be fucking great together, mate.
The antagonist of the movie is Emperor Commodus, played by Joaquin Phoenix, Ridley Scott's first choice, but he did have one other name in consideration, Jude Law. Joaquin Phoenix is a big name now, but at the time of this film was a huge step up for him, and he was nervous about playing Commodus. He felt so out of his depth that he offered to pay the producers back for his hotel and travel if they let him walk away from the movie. Before filming scenes with Crowe, he would ask Crowe to slap him around a bit to psych himself up for the scene. Crowe said to him, why don't you try acting, you little maggot? And Phoenix replied, oh, that was good. Can we go now? Phoenix was so intense in the role that immediately after filming the scene where Commodus kills Marcus Aurelius by squeezing the life out of him, he passed out on set. Crowe spoke to Richard Harris, who played Marcus Aurelius, about Phoenix and said, "What am I going to do with this kid? He keeps asking me to abuse him before takes." And Harris, being Harris, said, "Let's get him pissed," and then took him for a few pints of Guinness. Midway through production, Scott noticed Phoenix was noticeably chunkier. He spoke to Phoenix about it. Phoenix said, "Yes, I'm a fat little hamster. Why wouldn't I be? I'm the Emperor of Rome." Scott told him to lose the weight immediately, which he did. Unlike Maximus, Commodus is based on a real-life person, the former Emperor of Rome, and it seems the real Commodus was just as merciless. He was born to a mother who had slept with a gladiator and then bathed in his blood, and because of this, Commodus referred to himself as the Gladiator Emperor, and would fight in the Colosseum. Whenever he fought, his opponent would be stabbed in the back before the match, which is what happens to Maximus at the end of the film. Commodus would also take people with disabilities into the Colosseum arena, tie them together, and club them to death. He was such a megalomaniac that he renamed Rome Colonia Commodania and began charging the state for his appearances in the Colosseum. He charged them so much that the value of Roman currency fell. Historians say this directly led to the fall of the Roman Empire. Commodus was eventually killed for his indiscretions. He was poisoned in the bath, and when he vomited up the poison, he was strangled by a wrestler named Narcissus. Interestingly, Narcissus was Maximus's name in the first draft of Gladiator. A key supporting character is Proximo, the slave trader and former gladiator who becomes a mentor of sorts to Maximus. He was played by Oliver Reed, who, as a notorious hellraiser, caused some issues on set. He said he took the role because he fancied a trip to London to see a couple of shows. Omid Jalili, who played the slave trader and shared a scene with Reed. In this scene, Proximo grabs Jalili's character by the crotch. This wasn't part of the script. Reed improvised it. And Jalili said, "The film got an Oscar, Russell Crowe got an Oscar, Ollie got a posthumous Oscar. I got a partial erection."
Proximo, my old friend. Every day is a great day when you are here. But today is your most fortunate day.
Those giraffes you sold me, they weren't made. They just walk around eating and not mating. You sold me queer giraffes. I want my money back.
Not a chance. I do special price for you.
On what?
Have you seen my new stock? Come and see them.
After Maximus successfully wins the Battle of Carthage Recreation in his first appearance at the Colosseum, Commodus brings in Maximus's biggest challenge yet. He must face off against the only undefeated gladiator in Roman history, Tigris the Gaul. Tigris the Gaul is played by Sven Ole Thorsen, a Danish bodybuilder and former World's Strongest Man winner. It's also worth mentioning that Sven appeared in most of Arnold Schwarzenegger's movies. But he wasn't originally cast. Initially, the role went to Lou Ferrigno, famous for playing the Incredible Hulk in the 1970s TV show. A memorable element of the fight between Maximus and Tigris the Gaul is that Commodus has several live tigers released into the arena. Not a movie embellishment, this idea was based on reality, as the Romans would often throw tigers or lions into the Colosseum unannounced for the gladiators to deal with. Ridley Scott had 5 tigers on the set and, for safety reasons, had an expert on hand with a gun loaded with tranquilizer darts should anything go wrong. The tigers weren't supposed to come within 15 feet of Russell Crowe, but due to a miscalculation, the biggest tiger got within 2 feet of him and swiped at him. That shot is in the film.
You know, our job is to make them look tame and quiet, and in reality they're not.
Tigers don't do what you ask them to do every time.
Something we see all the way through the film is the famous thumbs up or thumbs down that the Emperor gives when deciding whether a gladiator should live or die. In reality, it was actually the other way around. Thumbs up meant death, and thumbs down meant mercy. This was because thumbs down represented the sheathing of a sword. The crew was aware of this while making the movie, but since thumbs up is considered a good sign nowadays, they decided not to confuse the audience. When shooting began, Russell had a soccer game scheduled, but the producers and director asked him not to play as it was dangerous and could jeopardize the shoot. Russell Crowe got so mad he gave them an ultimatum.
They did send me a memo asking me not to play in the soccer game. And so I sent a memo back. So I can wrestle with the 4 tigers, but I can't play a girly game like soccer.
It's still dangerous.
Kiss my butt. Love, Russell.
When filming started, despite the rewrites, the cast were still complaining about script problems. Russell Crowe said they started shooting with only 21 approved pages, so William Nicholson, who wrote First Night in 1995, was brought in. He made Maximus more sensitive, brought out his friendship with Juba, and added the afterlife aspect, so Maximus wasn't just out for revenge. Connie Nielsen, who played Commodus' sister Lucilla, was as a part-time historian. Knew a lot about ancient Rome. She complained about the first draft of the script, which made references to the museums and police, neither of which existed in ancient Rome. The famous score for the film was composed by Hans Zimmer and Lisa Gerrard, who also sang several of the songs. Zimmer was originally planning to use Israeli singer Ofra Haza after working with her on The Prince of Egypt in 1998. Tragically, Ofra died before she was able to record, and Lisa Gerrard was chosen instead. She'd worked on The Insider in 1999 with Crowe, and she and Zimmer composed the music for Gladiator together. Before Lisa Gerrard came on board, the legendary tenor Luciano Pavarotti was asked to sing for the soundtrack, but he said no. Also, Hans Zimmer was sued by the Gustav Holst Foundation, who claimed parts of Zimmer's score were too similar to Holst's Mars, the bringer of war. Oliver Reed famously passed away during filming. 3 weeks before production ended. A legendary Hellraiser, he died in a pub during a break after drinking 8 pints of German lager, a dozen shots of rum, half a bottle of whiskey, a few shots of cognac, and after beating 5 Royal Navy sailors at arm wrestling. A clause in the movie's insurance contract would have let Ridley Scott reshoot all of Reed's scenes, but most of the actors and crew were exhausted and Scott didn't want to cut Reed from the movie. William Nicholson was flown back in to do rewrites, and a body double and CGI were used to give Reed's character a different ending. Reed was posthumously nominated for an Oscar, but when the film was first announced, Scott didn't want Ollie Reed for Proximo. He wanted Arnold Schwarzenegger. He changed his mind and cast Reed when the character was rewritten to be older and have more depth. The film ends with Juba burying the figurines of Maximus's family in the Colosseum before heading back to his family in Africa. Originally, though, before the death of Oliver Reed, it was supposed to be Proximo burying the figures in the sand. Also, Maximus didn't die in the original versions of the script. Scott and Crowe changed it on set. Crowe later said, "I remember Ridley coming up to me on set saying, 'Look, the way this is shaping up, I don't see how you live. This character is about one act of pure vengeance for his wife and child. And once he's accomplished that, what does he do? Does he end up running a fucking pizzeria in the Colosseum?'" Away from Hollywood, Gladiator had a direct impact on increased interest in Roman history, particularly in the US, after it was released. The New York Times called it the Gladiator effect, and books like Cicero's biography and Marcus Aurelius's Meditations received massive spikes in sales after its release. Though Russell Crowe gained big popularity after LA Confidential, according to him, nothing compared to what Gladiator did for his life.
You know, it was very comfortable to be famous after LA Confidential. You know, it was sort of, that was the sort of thing where all the cool kids saw that film. It wasn't a gigantic hit, but if you wanted to go to a restaurant, you know, the girl at the restaurant, she'd seen the movie, "Hello, Mr. Crowe, how you doing?" You know, or a nightclub or whatever, and it was fine. When Gladiator expanded things to a completely different degree, I think the day that I really realized that something was massively different, I was in Rome, actually, and I just walked out of my hotel and I'd gone shopping, and I was in the store, is it the Via Veneto, whatever it's called, and I came out of the shop, and like the whole street, the entire street was full of people. You know, you looked that way to the Spanish Steps, it was just packed with people, and that way was packed, and you know, So I went up to one of these cops that was there, because there's cops everywhere with guns, and I went up to him, what's going on, you know? And he goes, you, Gladiator, you are going on. I was like, and then they all started erupting, this whole street full of people go, Massimo, Massimo. Yeah, it was crazy.
Bonus fact, as promised, playing Maximus hadn't just made him a movie star, it had made him royalty in the eyes of Rome itself.
This guy comes up and goes, Russell, for you today, I will turn on the lights of the Pope. I said, sorry? He goes, well, the Pope, he likes to come to the chapel to meditate. He likes to see all the beautiful colors. So we put in some lights. And he turns on these lights. Boom! I mean, that ceiling is amazing in natural light. When it's got like 16 spotlights on it, man, and you can see the real color of the light blue of the sky and the reds, and you know, you can almost, with that much light on it, feel like you can see the paint strokes. So you're there under Michelangelo's genius in the light. And I said to the guy, that was amazing. You know, why did you do that? And he goes, Russell, please, Massimo, you are the 8th king of Rome. At my signal, unleash hell.